can you hear us?
I can.
Yay,
Can
and
you
we
hear
can
me?
hear
Can you
you.
hear me? Okay.
Yes, we sure can. Hooray! Thank you so much for joining us from afar, and yet you're oh so close. Here in our little gay comic shop. We are so grateful to get to chat with you.
Hi. Thank you for having me.
My first question is maybe not well phrased. What would you like to be called?
It's Boom, actually.
Okay, great.
That's
Perfect.
fine. It's not like I have this very long French name, so I'd rather I use Boom in my
Awesome.
in Quebec at least.
Well, perfect. Well, Boom, thank you so much for joining us. We're really excited to learn more about you and about this beautiful book, The Jellyfish. We just before you joined us, we're each sort of going around and talking about the point of the book that broke us, where we started crying. So I'm gonna try really hard not to cry while we're talking to you. But
I'm interested.
yeah. If you don't mind, I would love if we could start by just learning a little bit more about you, about sort of who you are and your journey into comics.
Sure. I pretty much did comics my whole life. When I was a kid, I was like in elementary school. I was part of the school newspaper team, and I was like the resident cartoonist. Um, and then when I was in high school, and I had to choose kind of like a career, comics in Quebec kind of well, they existed, but they were really really underground. There were no publishers, like local publishers. People who wanted to work in comics either had to aim for France or Belgium because we speak French, right? Or aim for the States. And so we had no clue if what I had no clue, and teenagers like me around me had no clue if making comics was doable at all in Quebec. That was in the early 2000s. And then so I went ahead and studied animation, like traditional hand drawn animation. So I found out along the way that what I enjoyed the most was telling stories through drawings. So animation and comics kind of check the same boxes. I worked in animation for a while after school, but then what happened is that I got pregnant, and I was a freelancer in animation. And freelancing in animation is always a rush job, and it didn't quite uh, go well with my pregnancy state. I would say I couldn't work at all, and so I silently dropped out of animation, and I had started making comics on the side, kind of for a fun side project. I had a web comic that I started, and I kept doing that. And then I had two kids, and even with the babies around me, I kept working on the web comic. And then when I emerged from my parental leave, well, I had like I don't know, 5 or 6 comic collections that I had made throughout the years, and then suddenly I had like a career as a cartoonist, and I realized that I didn't miss animation at all, and so I just kept going. I did The Jellyfish is my 16th book. Not all of them have been translated and have made their way into the United States. Yeah, I think that's it.
That's amazing. I was gonna say, I think The Jellyfish is the first that we've had like really readable access to of yours, thanks to the folks at Pow Pow. But we, yeah, are eager to track down more that have been translated for sure.
They're really different. I tried a bunch of things. I like to give myself challenges. I dabbled in the webcomic I made was a journal comic, so like a strip thing, and like 4 panels, gags, all true stories, really different looking, like really simple cartoons. This was self-published, and so there's no real way to get them except like order them directly from me. And then there was this other book I made that was translated in. I made the book. The original French version was released in 2012. It came out in English in 2017 from Soaring Penguin Press, but it's a really small publisher. And I know it was distributed in some parts of the US, but I haven't heard from it really. It was a very, very small print run. I don't know. I don't know if it still exists. So it's out of print, probably. It's all available on the web though. Like both my journal comic is free to read on the web, and this one too, which is called A Small Revolution. Yeah, but they're kind of old. A Small Revolution is 10 years older, almost to the date, than the Jellyfish. And when I open A Small Revolution, I kind of do like, because it's been a while, and I'm kind of hard on myself, but I think it's interesting to see the evolution, like where I started and where I am now.
Speaking of where you are now and the Jellyfish, I'd love to chat a little bit more about some of the sort of inspiration behind this book and sort of how this book came to be.
Sure. So this is not my story, but it's inspired from a bunch of things I've gone through. I've been having eye diseases for almost 20 years now. And in the early 2000s, I had like thousands and thousands of floaters inside of one of my eyes, my right eye. Floaters are like, most people end up getting them at some point in their life. They're benign, but when you have thousands, they're kind of annoying. So they're tiny gray dots in your vision. They're translucent, but they float around for a while, and then from what I understood is that there are cells inside the eye, and eventually they fall to at the bottom of the eye, and you don't see them anymore until you get new ones. And so I had thousands of them, and it formed kind of like a blob in front of my vision that moved like a jellyfish. Like if I moved my eyes, the blob would kind of like drag behind and slowly like position itself into the center of my vision. And I went to see ophthalmologist for it, and they didn't really know what was going on. And so I didn't have a name for it. I didn't have a disease name. I didn't know what I had, a diagnosis of any sort. So I named it my jellyfish. And so I kept saying I had a jellyfish inside of my eye. And I ended up thinking I could probably make a story out of this and write the story of a character who had a literal jellyfish inside of their eye. And because I was in animation then, this was almost an animated short. There was a call for submissions for the National Film Board of Canada in 2010, for which I pitched a 5-6 minute long short. It was a storyboard, so not animated yet. And I was one of 3 finalists. And I didn't win, so I didn't get picked. And I took that idea and put it in a jar, but it was basically the same, but the light version, which is kind of diagnosis acceptance. That was pretty much it, because what can you tell in 5 minutes? But it's a good thing, because the book I made out of the same idea years later is much better than the film I would have made. But what ended up happening between the film pitch and the book is that my eye condition worsened, and eventually I lost it. I'm blind now in this eye, which is kind of why I hide it. Sometimes it gets lazy and goes its own way. My eye is still there. Like, I don't look fine, but I am blind in this eye now. And so I just figured I'm gonna take all of my fears and feelings and give them to a fictional character. And so I wrote a script for a comic in 2019. I revised it a bunch of times. It pretty much wrote itself. The rest of it is not my story, because I didn't feel it would be as interesting to just be like, oh, I went to the doctors and they tried to save my eye, it didn't work. And then I came back home and I have kids, and so I cooked dinner for my children. So I thought that, no, I'm just gonna make a story up, but all the parts that are like in the hospitals or clinics with the doctors, everything is kind of directly inspired from something I've gone through.
Hearing you sort of how you translated some of your personal narrative to Odette, to the main character, were there the other folks that sort of make up Odette's world? Are they also folks from your world?
No, but they are. Oh, I can hear myself suddenly. They're kind of like parts of me, which is kind of strange because I guess all three characters have kind of like bits of me. That's just how I write, and I think most people end up writing is that you write about things that you know and you incorporate people that you meet or situations you've been in. So Leo, it's never said out loud, but it's implied that he goes to university and he goes to the same university I went to. So it's implied that he's studying cinema in university. Nena, she has kind of like my body. Like I mean, it was very very nice to like have Nena be like the sexy one, the beautiful one, but then make her bigger, and that's kind of like what I look like. And so drawing all the panels where Odette looks at Nena like, oh my god, she's so beautiful, it made me feel really great about myself to have like my own body put in a great light that I would usually like. It's difficult to love one's body sometimes, and it helped me to put my like give the pretty character my body type. And so I think Nena also likes video games and anime, and that's like I'm into anime and video games. I guess we all have like tidbits of my personality. Odette does have some of my personality traits as well. I think that's the rest of it is just trying to write an interesting story. So no, they're not like directly inspired from people. Odette's mother, she is kind of inspired from one of my best friend's mother, who has a very, very, very nervous energy. She's not like as much of a helicopter parent as Odette's mother is, and I designed her without even thinking, and she ended up looking like my friend's mother. And she's read the book, so no, it's not on purpose.
Knowing that each of those sort of three main characters is sort of a facet of yourself, is there one that you sort of heard loudest or most clearly as you were writing?
A part of myself? I guess I just wanted to, as I wrote the book, one of the things I wanted to tell the readers is how frightening it can be, and I wanted to share my experiences. It's also, I wrote this also reacting to a bunch of things that had happened to me. Like I'm married, okay, and my husband knew about my eye problems, but because I don't talk about them every day, now that I lost my eye, it's different. But before I lost it, he would forget, and every once in a while he'd be like, "Do you still have your jellyfish inside of your eye?" And I'd be like, "Oh, it's true. You don't get to not think about it ever, right?" And so I wanted to make the reader feel something that can't be avoided. Like at some point in the book, there is a point of no turning back, where you will see the jellyfish from this point on every panel, every page. And so that was like trying to make my husband understand what I was feeling and what I was going through. Not just him, of course. I mean, this is the example I use because he lives with me. But it's true with a bunch of friends, like they would forget. And it's kind of exhausting to a point where you don't want to be talking about it all the time, but it would be nice to have like to connect with people. Like, no, I'm still suffering. I don't look it, and then I'm suffering. And so I wanted to share this with the reader. And from what I've learned, because this book is now in French, it came out in 2022. And from what I've learned along the way is that it works. People usually they had like the comebacks I get like this. I wanted to like scratch the jellyfish off the pages, and we're so like I got anxiety reading this, and I'm like, yes, good, that's what I wanted.
Yeah.
I have a
question about the translation process into English. Did you get to have any input in that? Like, did you get to see first drafts of the
Yes.
English translation? And when you did, was there anything that you like got to have input on, or did you just think the translators did a great job and said, this is fine?
It was very interesting. Since I speak English, like it's the only translation that I can oversee. I like a translation in any other language, I would probably be like, yeah, awesome, okay, I don't know. They would actually send me their work draft. It was on a like Google Drive, and so I could see them work. And sometimes they would ask me questions like, "Oh, because like in French, tu trembles can mean both you're shivering or you're shaking," and then they'd be like, "Which one would you like?" Like, oh, okay, shivering is best for the scene. They had some interesting input. This is my first time working with translators. The other books that I have available in English, I did the translations myself. They work. I'm not an Anglophone. It's not my first language, so you can read them, but it's not the best translation possible. So I'm really happy with how the Jellyfish turned out. One of the most interesting aspects of the translating the Jellyfish to English was that since it's set in Montreal, and Montreal is a French language city, they really wanted to keep Montreal true to herself. And so the bookstore in French, it's called Point Virgule, which means semicolon. So, semicolon. But they thought that first, semicolon is not as pretty as point virgule is in French. And they figured it kind of sounds weird. And also it's an English name for Montreal bookstore. And so they suggested I use apostrophe because it's the same word in French and English. It's spelled the same. And so if you think that it's set in Montreal, it's losing my English. It works because it's a French store name in Montreal, but then an Anglophone, an English-speaking reader won't be like, what's that? What does that mean? Another interesting thing that was changed from the French to English versions, some names were changed. Leo's girlfriend, Rachel, that's not her name in French, but she has her name is Martine, which is kind of spelled like Martin. It's like the feminine of Martin. And one of the translators felt that it kind of sounded like a guy name. And so we opted to change it to a French, but like English swappable name kind of. And also another thing that I feel is interesting to point out, especially tonight, Odette in the French is a she, her, because we do not have a neutral pronoun. We kind of start to have one now, neutral pronouns, like gender neutral. But French is a very, very gendered language. And so if you use the neutral pronoun, every goddamn adjective has to be like masculine, feminine all the time. And I felt that this would be a pain to read. And especially when I started the script in 2019, the neutral pronoun that we have now did not really exist. And it's a very, very new thing. And it's starting to be implemented, but it's still not natural sounding, especially in dialogues. Maybe in an essay or, that works. But especially in dialogues and comic, it didn't feel quite there yet. And so I decided that in French, Odette would be a she, her. But then when we translated it, I insisted. I'm like, no, Odette is a they, them, please. But then we found out that we didn't really need pronouns in the book. So in the book itself, like if you take out the facts and the book descriptions, there is not a single pronoun that involves Odette because they're present all the time. And there's only one scene where Nina and Leo speak of Odette. And at first they had put the translators wanted to use they there, but they were like, it's page 142. Is it really, it's kind of late to introduce a pronoun. And I disagreed, but I trusted them and I just said, well, can we take him out? And so the reader can, if they want Odette to be a she, her, then that's fine. If they want Odette to be a they, them, then that's great. And So I'm really happy about that thing. But then we couldn't avoid the pronouns in the blurbs. And yeah, so that was really interesting. I had my say in the translation. I had a great time. They did a great job. It was really, really much longer than I thought it would. Like, they had so many drafts, and some scenes are actually better in English than they are in French. I find the fight scene is like English has more punch than French does, and Odette cusses more in English than French, and I like that. Did I answer your question?
Yes, that was.
Okay.
Thank you so much.
Thank you so much for making this. This was amazing. I cried on and off throughout reading this. It was incredible. The drawing is incredible, and really it was the humanity of all the characters, but especially Odette, that was so human. That, repeating myself, that like really came out. I was looking, I finally found it. It was like page 50 or 51 or 52, where she sits down. It's the beginning of spring, and she says, "Why is this happening to me?" And that was like the first moment where I like choking, like choke back sobs. And it just, even though this is a very specific thing to her, it's a visual thing. Just the struggle of being alive and having your body not working the way that it has been working is. I thought it was such a beautiful portrayal, and obviously that's like a big part of the story, but it never felt like, I don't know, it's just so good. It was so beautifully portrayed, and I don't have any words. I normally have words. It was great.
Thank you.
I just really want to thank you, because it's even just the interactions between all the characters were so human in a way that I don't think always comes across in a comic book format. Not that it can't be done, but it's just not what you expect. Her interactions with her mother, the friends' interactions with each other, everything like that is, it's something that like I'd expect to see on like a prestige television show, but not necessarily in a comic book, where normally a character is announcing what they're doing, why they're doing it, all those things. And this was, you see everything happen. The progression of the jellyfish was beautiful. I mean, the last several pages, even just looking at the, you can see all the jellyfish come in. And it's like I felt like there wasn't even a wasted page. Like every single jellyfish, every single page, was perfect. Like you needed every single part of it. And it was just incredible. And like, obviously this was both eyes, but other people were talking about people who they know with vision changes. And one of the people who I'm close with also lost one eye as well, her left eye. So, but also, and I've had floaters too. So hearing the jellyfish, I was like, on like the first page, I was like, oh, I know exactly what she's talking about. Mine are like worms or lightning bolts when they come up, and it is weird because it's your vision. And so just seeing that portrayed and seeing a character so vulnerable, and just these moments that are beautiful where they're by themselves, and it's just not something that I usually get to see it in this medium, and it was beautifully done. I loved every second of it. I mean,
Thank
I cried
you so much.
I was super sad, but I loved it. Loved it. It was really fun.
Thank you. I don't know what to say to this. It means a lot. I worked my ass off on this, but I had a ton of fun, which is kind of weird because it's kind of it's a hopeful book, but it's kind of a sad book. Actually, I wrote the love story kind of to balance it out, because at first there was not any love interest or whatever, and I just thought that like it would like super depressing for the whole thing. And so I was like, I need some kind of light in there, and so I introduced the character of Nina. But I don't know. I had fun. I think that it shows, and especially like in the care and like in the visuals and the details. As for the dialogues, thank you. I don't really know what I'm doing, actually. Like every book I've done is always something new, and like I said, I like to challenge myself. This is my longest book, but I'm writing another one, which will be longer because I guess I like to torture myself. But I'm so amazed the response that this book got. In French, in Quebec, it won like just about every award it could win. And so I'm scared to write another book now because I feel like everyone's waiting, like they have expectations. And I took a full year to decide what to work on next because I was scared. And now I've kind of come to terms that the next one's going to be bad and no one will like it. And then I can. I'm having fun working on the next one. It's very different. I had to make some sort of separation. Like, okay, this won't be like the jellyfish. I can't make a personal book like that every time. There will be more probably because I have health issues and I lost an eye because I have multiple sclerosis. And so now I know that I have MS. And I will probably make a book about that along the way, but it's too fresh now. And so I want to do something else. And my next one is like magic realism, kind of like the TV show Severance, kind of like Eternal Sunshine of the Spotless Mind. There is some queer representation in it. One of the women, it's 3 main characters, 3 women, and one of them is a lesbian. But it's not like, I don't want to say not important to the story because that's not true, but it's like not the main focus. It's just like queer people, they're in the book, and that's how it should be. And so I feel like every book I make from now on will have some sort of like body diversity, racial diversity, and like queer people and disabled or whatever. Like I'm trying to be as inclusive as I can get because I have. I'm an author and I can spread that kind of, sorry, I'm looking for my words. I can spread that kind of representation and information. And so I think it's part of my job to do it. And so I'm happy that the jellyfish was well received. I was kind of shy about it at first because I'm in a straight relationship. I have a husband and I'm, cis and he's cis. And I thought people were going to like, who is she? Like, why is she making comics about queer people? I'm like, well, it's about people and they just happen to be queer and who cares? Like, and so I'm quite happy about how it's been received so far. I digressed. I went like, thank you. And then I guess I had stuff to say.
I do have a question about Odette specifically, and I don't know if there was something you had in mind, and it's not ultimately important, and I like that it wasn't really included, but was there a disease that you had in mind that Odette had? And I like that it wasn't actually portrayed because you understood when the doctor, it was kind of like if you're watching a TV or a movie, the sound goes, maybe the music plays, and you see the characters talking, but you don't hear what they're saying. I wasn't sure if there was something that you were thinking of that Odette had. And again, not that it's important, but I was just curious.
Not really, because as I said, I had like so many photos that looked like a jellyfish. It was just like a straight version of what I saw, I could see, because now I can't see my jellyfish anymore. So, it's kind of a relief. But it can be whichever. Some people are annoyed by this. I have received some messages like, what is the official Latin name for this disease? Like like an actual jellyfish inside of your eye? I don't think it's true, man. Like so I just wanted, it's some people see it as a metaphor. I kind of see it like, that has a jellyfish inside of their eye, and it doesn't have to be explained. Kind of like, oh no, how's it called? Boris Vian's book. In French, it's L'écume des jours. In English, it has no, like the translation, the title. The woman in the book has a pond lily thing growing inside of her lungs. I'm going to have to look it up. Somebody talk and I couldn't hear you.
Oh, you said all I heard was lungs. Did you mean tuberculosis?
No. It's a book by Boris Vian. I'm gonna look it up. Froth on the Daydream. No, if you don't know about it. It's prose. It's not a comic. It's an old book from the 50s, I think. and it's surrealism, like nothing, like kind of like a prose version of Dali's paintings, where nothing ever makes, like everything is weird. Like the guy wakes up in the morning and he's like, "Oh, I'm gonna give myself a mysterious look today," and then he snips parts of his eyelids to have a more mysterious look. And so his girlfriend in the book ends up having kind of like a plant growing inside of her, and it's a metaphor for cancer. But in the book, it's not cancer, it's a plant. And it's kind of like the same feeling where in the book, it's a jellyfish. You want to think it's a real disease, it's fine. Don't like, I can't answer you because it's not um, a real disease. Some guy on Goodreads, I think, was like, "Oh, I have Odette's disease and I have treatment, so I'm kind of baffled as to why Odette has no treatment and why they're allowing them to lose their vision." And I didn't reply, but I kind of wanted to say, like, what if it's not exactly the same disease, Mister? Because it's whatever you want to make of it. I don't like to guide the reader too much. I like to give hints and let the reader make up parts of it, which is why also I like my endings to be sometimes kind of blurry, and because you'll see if you read my other books, I don't like definite endings where everything is explained, because I like to let the reader think.
Yeah, I just want to echo pretty much all of Gary's comments about. Oh, can you hear me? Okay.
I can hear you right now.
Okay. Yeah, pretty much everything that he said about just the book was really beautiful. It was really touching. Just kind of, it felt masterfully done. Like you could tell this was not your first rodeo. You put your experience shows through. And I just found it really personally affecting. I found myself related in the book in a lot of ways. I have not any severe vision loss, but I have other disabilities, so I related in that way. And just your point, why are the doctors doing nothing? Have you been to the doctor? That's what they do when you come to them with a mysterious illness. They go, "Oh, I don't know, take these drops," and just. Yeah, other things I know you said with Nina's body type, I have a similar one too. It's really nice to see her just adored by Odette and just say, "Oh, you're beautiful." And I found also really just beautiful and important to me is I'm also a person who, like Odette, doesn't really emotionally like to lean on people too much. So I found it really important when they had the fight and her friends and her loved ones came back anyway and just saying, understanding, yeah, you exploded, you're not perfect, but we still love you. I thought that was really beautiful and important. And the whole ending, it ended on when I recommended it to my friends, I said, this book made me cry. It's devastating, but it has a hopeful ending. And I love that. But, it's life doesn't end because you lost your sight. You still have so much more life to live, and there's so many more opportunities. And I loved it all around. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you. I want this because it's relevant to a question I was asked earlier, but the part where Odette doesn't want to talk about their condition to the others, it's also something that I lived with when I was diagnosed with multiple sclerosis. I kind of knew this was coming because I've had so many eye diseases, and whenever I would Google them, it said something like, "Oh, it's often linked to MS," and I was like, "Well, someday I'm going to have the diagnosis." And then when I knew it, it was a relief. My grief, I had grieved, it was done. I knew, I lost my eye. I was not even shocked. It's been so long. I've had so many problems with this eye. But then telling my family, like my mother and my sister, I could not tell them right away because I knew it was going to be a big deal to them. And it felt weird when I told them. Finally, they cried, and then I wanted to say something like, "Why are you crying? It's not you, it's me." But then in the hindsight, I realized that I had grieved and they had not yet. And so I had to let them work this out. But it still felt quite heavy on my shoulders to carry their grief as well as mine. And so I wanted to incorporate this into the book as well, because I felt that it was real and raw and human. And it made me, like, it helped me come to terms with a bunch of stuff I was going through as well.
Is there anything that you wanted to include that you didn't get a chance to, or maybe something that got cut in the editing process?
No, I think I did pretty much everything I wanted. It was shorter before, and I ended up adding some scenes. Some things happened on their own. When I decided to incorporate a romance, at first Odette was with a man, and I looked at Odette, and they almost told me, like, "Are you crazy?" That sometimes you write a character, and it's like they make their own decisions, and that's one of the best, my favorite parts of writing. And it's not like they really make their own decisions, but they kind of they kind of become coherent, and they guide you somehow. Like, this did not fit. Like, putting Odette with a man in a relationship with a man, it made no sense. And so it's like Odette decided, no, I'm going to be with a woman, whether you like it or not. And I'm glad I went this way. Anyway, I always imagined Odette as being very, gender fluid, or kind of like on the fine line between genders, and so it made more sense that they would be queer. What else did I put in there? It's been a long time. I kind of forgot. I'm pretty happy with it overall. Of course, some scenes. I actually, an interesting thing to say is that because I worked on the book for about 3 years. Of the 3 years, 1 year and a half, the last year and a half was full time, and more than full time, like full time until like midnight every night, because I had a deadline. When you have your nose in the same project for so many years, and you work alone on it, even if you have your publisher and your friends telling you, like, this is great, keep going, you inevitably end up thinking that it's crap. And so at some point I was like, this is the most boring thing. I thought that it was just a series of really bland anecdotes, like, oh, you meet their mother, oh, and they go to the laundromat, oh, and they go to the restaurant. It's kind of I knew that the jellyfish visual gimmick was a good one. I knew that this would, well, I hoped it would work. I knew it was good, but I didn't know if it would work. But the rest of it, I thought was kind of like, meh. And then when the book came out, some people were like, this book is so good that even if you took the jellyfish out, it would still stand. And I disagree, but thank you. But now that it's been a while, I haven't, like, you should ask authors around you, but when the book comes out, I don't know if any author that actually reads their book. I haven't read it, like the book version. I've read it like thousands of times on the computer. I looked at it at the printed version, and I'm really happy at how it came out, because I think the paper is really good. The paper is like off-white, and I think it's just chef's kiss. But I haven't read it, and it's hard to shed the feeling that it's kind of boring, but I've got so many good reviews for it that I've had to accept that it's probably a good book. But it's a weird feeling. Sometimes I'll look at it and, like, did I make this? Did I make this? Mm-hmm. It's weird. It's kind of like it's got its own life now, and it's been years since I did it, and so it feels kind of like alien to me. And probably I'm going to read it at some point, like maybe in 10 years, read it again and be like, oh yeah, that's what I was going through at that time. But it's weird to read your own work. I digress a lot. I hope it's interesting.
Can I ask what that you're most proud of from this book? You've certainly, I mean, other than the fact that it exists in multiple languages, that it, has taken on a life all on its own. But are there pieces that really stick with you that you're especially proud of?
I think as a whole, I like it as a whole. There's some scenes in it. There's my favorite page that I'm really proud of, and that I was really sad that I had to cover with Jellyfish because it's towards the end. It's that one page where Odette is in their bed all day and they turn and toss. And so the book is entirely digitally drawn. And so the jellyfish are on a separate layer that I can't hide. I had to work this way because the jellyfish are kind of see-through, and so there was no way around drawing the whole thing and then covering it in jellyfish afterwards. But I really like this page because you can see like the passage of time. If you look at the alarm clock, if you look at the number of like tissues increasing around Odette because they've been crying, the light going through the page. And I was really, really happy with that one. I'm like, yeah, I'm not sure which one it is. Towards the end, so probably 170 something, 170, 180 maybe. It's 6 panels.
172.
It's 172?
You're right on
Is
it.
it really?
Yeah.
Hi. I'm impressed with myself. So that's my favorite page. It's really not like it's not even an action page. Action pages I don't do a lot of action, but like if you need like a manga or action pages aren't always like the most impressive ones. I'm like, my favorite page is the one where the character does nothing at all. That comes from, I think, my animation background as well, that I can do like a bunch of panels that look the same. If you look at them quite fast, you can see like the animation. I'm really proud of how far it's come. In Quebec is like the province I'm from. Quebec is a French-speaking province in Canada. There's French-speaking people elsewhere in the country, but the bulk of it is in Quebec. And it's kind of like we're this micro society where the French books kind of don't get out of Quebec. Like in the rest of Canada, they kind of don't know our authors. And we kind of don't know them, but we have translations. Anyway, what I mean is my book has become a bestseller in Quebec. That's not a lot of copies. So a best-selling book in Quebec is about 3,000 to 5,000 copies. But a comic to make it to that selling point in Quebec is a huge feat in Quebec. And I've done that. I sold a bunch, like thousands, in France and Belgium too, which is kind of like, do you know how many comics come out each year in France and Belgium? 5,000? Makes no sense. And then somehow my tiny book kind of like what's happening? And so I went on a book tour in France thanks to this book. I went to the festival in Angoulême, which is the biggest French-speaking comics festival in the world. I think attendance even beats San Diego Comic-Con, something like 200,000 people. And people recognize me on the street, like, "Are you Boom? Like, what? I'm in another continent, and people recognize me. Like, I'm trying to eat this really huge baguette, and people are like, "Are you Boom, girl?" And so it's unreal. This book has changed my life. Really, and I'm eager to know to see what's ahead, and I'm also very scared, but I trust that like this book has helped me and will help me get through get grants for other comics, because we have a grant system in Canada. So I got a grant for my next book, so I can work on it full time, which is great. And so I guess I'm proud of all the work I put in. I worked a lot, but I love the work that I do.
That's amazing. Do your kiddos like comics?
Yes. my oldest is 11, and she can churn out like 25 pages of comics every day. But it's kind of like automatic. Like she doesn't think about it really. She's like, and I understand nothing. I'm just like, this is great. I have no clue what's going on. Oh yeah, the characters from Five Nights at Freddy's, and then she tries to explain like the lore, and I don't know anything about it. I'm kind of like out of touch. But it's great that she does this. She's going to like a summer camp thing about like cartooning, and so she's been doing it for like 3 years in a row. So she really likes them. My youngest does not draw as much, but she reads a bunch of comics. I mean, I read a bunch of comics. You know, when you have cartoonists and comic artists, that we are not there for the money, because there's not a lot of money in comics. We're just there because we love comics. And I have a bunch. That's pretty much all I read. I read novels every once in a while, but with kids it's harder because like you're trying to read this really, really complex book and like, Mom, I'm hungry, and then okay, and then you have to open the book again, like, where am I? And then you start over. Well, a comic, it's kind of easier to just be like, okay, yeah, that's where it was. And I love comics. And so my kids love comics too. I have a bunch. I have so many.
Is there anything in particular you've read lately that you're really loving?
I don't think it's available. Is it available in English?
That's okay if it's
There's
not.
one.
Jealous.
There's one that I read recently that is available in English from John and Quarterly. That is called The Great Beyond. I am not sure how to pronounce her last name. It's Léa Muraviec. Oh, Léa Muraviec. Muraviec. It's spelled Murawiec. And so it's a comic, and it's so visually striking. I do not have good examples. This is what the cover looks like. The colors are not that cool. Can you see? No, we can't see anything. Kind of.
Yeah, we do have a copy for anyone who's interested.
So this one, visually speaking, is amazing. Limited color palette, and like there's nothing like it. Their story is very interesting too. So I was very impressed with this book. My other book, I don't think exists in English. I'm going to look it up. It's by Anis El Amouri. Comme un frisson. Looks like a shiver. And I'm going to look it up if it exists in English, but I am not sure. He's on Instagram, but he's from France, but he speaks like 5 languages, so I'm not actually sure where he's from. Okay, so it exists in Spanish. Does it exist in English? I don't know. Yeah, so I can't find it. But yeah, so I brought that book back from my book tour in France, and it's just because I read books I can read books from France and Belgium and in English as well, and I read some manga. The Great Beyond is my latest one where I just went like, wow, this is unbelievable, and I want to try to incorporate some of that like visuals into my own work. For my next book, I'm going to attempt like 2 colors, like a duotone. So instead of having like black and gray, I'm going to have like hot pink and blue, just to see. We're going to have like contrasting. I'm going to try that. So I'm still working on the storyboard, so I don't know if I'm going to change idea along the way, but I'm pretty set on trying 2 colors.
That sounds amazing. Does anybody have any final questions for Boom? Okay. Oh, please.
Sorry.
No.
I just want to say thank you. I have a very close friend who lives in Quebec and is from Quebec and is also losing their vision and is non-binary and is queer. And I recommend it. I read this book yesterday, so I messaged them today and was like, you have to buy it, probably in French, but maybe in both, and they can read it in both French and English if they feel like it. But I think that this is going to mean so much to them. having so much overlap with the character and dealing with, they're pretty early with their vision loss. And I think that seeing a character that's sort of living what they're living is going to be incredible, but I don't want to speak for them. I just think it's going to be,
I think they're gonna freak out.
yeah. They're going to think they're you, probably.
Well, I hope they get to read it, and I hope they like it. And I hope they don't freak out that much. But I've had people being like, "Oh, I've just..." there was this one person who read the English version when it came out, and I think this person was losing their audition. Is that how you say it? Oop. No. Can you still hear me?
Yes.
Okay, can you still hear me? So this person was losing their audition. Is that how you say it?
They're
Hearing.
Hearing.
Yeah, we're not fancy. We just real lowest common.
No, but I should have known. It's just
No, that
sometimes,
sounds better. I feel like we should start using
Using
that.
audition, yeah.
because in French we have like 3 words for that. Anyway, and so this person, just as they were losing their hearing, they read the book, and they came to see me like a week after at a festival or whatever, and it was so fresh and raw to them, but they told me that the book had helped them grieve in some way, and that's like the biggest compliment. I was told, I'm like, oh my god, I can't believe you're telling me this. So I mean, this book has like we said, this book is hopeful, so I hope that they don't freak out.
Well, Bloom, do you have any questions for us? You certainly don't have to, but if you do, we would love to try to answer them.
I don't know. How close is Baltimore to Bethesda?
What a fun, common question we get. We are as close to Bethesda as anything is to Bethesda.
Because I'm gonna be a Small Press Expo in September.
Amazing. Yes. So we are, what are we, like 40 minutes?
45-minute drive.
Yeah.
Oh, awesome.
Yes.
I just like, if you want to come and have your book signed, I'll be there. And
We would-
SPX, if everything goes well. Hopefully I don't get like COVID or whatever, but I should be good.
Amazing. Yes. We love that question. So many of the creators we get to chat with are like, I only know Maryland because of Small Press Expo.
Oh,
Are you
no,
anywhere near that?
no.
We're like, okay, yep. No, because for some reason they picked the middle of nowhere, but yep.
There's nothing in Bethesda except Small Press Expo, isn't there? Bethesda is not like that big deal of a city. I think Baltimore is probably better. I've heard of Baltimore more than I've heard about Bethesda. But I'm from the East Coast, right? And so I've had road trips through Maryland, and I've stopped along the way. Yeah, I've been to Virginia and Florida, so we're driving down, going through Maryland. Thank you so much for having me. I hope everyone has their copy of the book. That's so great.
Yeah.
Thank you so much. I hope I get to see you and sign them. It'll be my pleasure. Please let me know that you were at this talk. Like, don't just go like, hi, and don't tell me, like, and not tell me. Please let me know that you were there.
Amazing.
so much.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Yeah, thank you so much for joining us. We really appreciate you and your time, and how much of yourself you shared in this beautiful, devastating, wonderful book. So thank you so much.
Thank you. I'm so happy you liked it.
Thank you.
you.
Thank you, Boom.
Thanks for having me.
Have a good night.
You
Evening.
too.
It's still early.
Bye.
Bye.
Bye.